Client Education Specialist, and we are here today to talk about how organizations can demonstrate their commitment to workplace mental health. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but this year's theme of World Mental Health Day, which takes place on Thursday, is it's time to prioritize mental health in the workplace. And we're here to talk to you about how URAC does it, some best practices that we've seen, and why workplace mental health matters so much. I know it's sort of new. We weren't necessarily seeing it until the pandemic brought a lot of things to life. So just before we get started, you all are already introducing yourself in the chat box. So I love hearing who you are and where you're from. We'll get to know you a little bit better as the course of the webinar goes on. And we do use the chat box for questions and chat. So you are welcome to chime in questions, thoughts, opinions, anything like that throughout the webinar. If you do have technical issues, you can message me directly. And we are recording this and we'll get you the recording later this week, probably Thursday or Friday. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Shawn Griffin, who is URAC's president and CEO, and he'll turn it over to Laura Wood. Thanks, Shawn.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. By the way, fall, I said that I like to apple pick. There's actually a place up the road from here called Catockin Orchard Market, which I discovered during the pandemic. And I go up there and I go early to get the apple cider donuts, and then I pick a bunch of apples. But they have the best pies in their little market there. I love getting the pies and bringing those back home to have for the holidays. So a little bit about us. So hi, I'm Shawn Griffin. I'm the president and CEO at URAC. We've been around for over 35, nearly 35 years. We're an accreditor. That's all we do. We don't sell consulting services. We don't, control measures or anything like that. We're an accreditor. And the reason why we're an accreditor is because we believe that accreditation helps to improve quality. And throughout healthcare and now throughout employment, we actually work on quality in all these different areas. And we deal with really small organizations and we deal with massive organizations. So at URAC, we know that excellence can look different for your corner pharmacy versus your multi-state health plan versus your multinational food company, those sort of things. And so what we do is we write standards so that no matter your size, no matter your location, you know what quality looks like. And it's a roadmap for you to become excellent and to have that culture. Whenever we build a program, we like to work with other organizations. Some of the people that we've worked with in the past, Columbia University, City of New York, is one of the big organizations in the One Mind group that help to do this work on best places to work, sort of improvement things that we can do and make a good place to work for people. Ethisphere is part of that also. Amazon's on our board, behavioral health, Psychiatric Association, even OPM. We know that we are not the experts in all of these things, but we bring the experts to the table so that you can benefit from their expertise. We're a really good accreditor, and that's what we do. So we're really excited to have you here. This is a small group. We're going to be talking about some things today about mental health at work and what makes it different and what makes it right. I was reminded this weekend, there was a story in the Washington Post about a ophthalmology resident here in Washington, D.C., who, due to the pressures around the pandemic and the pressures that they were feeling, ended up committing suicide. And that struck very close to home for me. I have a son who's in residency right now. And we saw a lot of the suffering going on during the pandemic. And that was part of what spurred us on to find One Mind and to create this program and to be supportive of people improving their workplaces. So now I'm going to bring on one of the smartest people I have, a person by the name of Laura Wood, and she's embarrassed I introduced her that way, but she is going to carry us through the rest of these slides and help us to learn some. So Laura, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shawn. I'll tell you, my autumn time thing is I love spooky things. I used to live in Salem, Massachusetts. I lived there for almost 10 years. And so, yes, people bring me Halloween decorations and I never take them down. So it's sort of in my house all the time. I am really glad to be here today talking to you all. And I want to reiterate what Lisa said about, adding questions to the chat. So Lisa will shoot them my way if I don't notice them while I'm talking. But if there's something that we talk about that you have questions or thoughts about, please share them with us. And I'll give us a couple of opportunities to talk about maybe some of our own experiences in the workplace with mental health. So to build on what Lisa said about what brings us here today, the first thing, the impetus for it is World Mental Health Day is Thursday. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what World Mental Health Day is and what the focus is this year. But this seemed a really good time for us to get together and talk about workplace mental health. I'll also say that I preface all of my discussions about workplace mental health and sort of by association, substance use disorder issues, with the fact that I want to share with you because I believe that we only get far in this by sort of removing the stigma. So with both mental health and substance use disorder, I have either personal or very close family experience with those. So that's why this work is really important to me in a way that's like, that I really want to focus on the ways that workplaces can help benefit people's lives, because I honestly do believe that's possible. So Lisa, do you want to hit the next slide? So this goes to the why does this matter? So World Mental Health Day 2024, there are tons of international organizations that support World Mental Health Day, including the World Health Organization and others. And so it happens that this year's main focus is it's time to prioritize mental health in the workplace. And on the next couple of slides, we don't have to go there yet, but I give you some information about sort of why is this important? What do the numbers look like? Because we can all sort of agree in a heart space way that this is important, but I think for us as leaders in organizations, we can also learn more about the sort of financial ramifications and the really numbers behind this. And again, as both Lisa and I think Shawn sort of referenced, at URAC, we started really thinking about this mental health in the workplace in relation to healthcare providers during the sort of very deepest parts of the pandemic. And we recognized that people who were providing healthcare to us and our families were really under tremendous stress. And that in some ways, the pandemic just exacerbated things that were already true and sort of laid them really bare for us. And that we really wanted to create this accreditation, and we'll talk more about the details around the accreditation and some of our partnerships, but we really wanted to create this originally to sort of protect the mental health of healthcare workers. And then we realized that it wasn't just healthcare workers, it was sort of all workers, all employees deserve to work in a workplace that protects and provides for their mental health. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that here are some numbers, which I don't need to read to you because these, in some ways, it's a little bit shocking, right? So fully, basically 1 in between 4 and 5 people, adults in the United States, have one or more mental health conditions. So that's like if there are 4 people around you, at least one of you probably does, right? And then you think about the people who come together in workplaces to make a difference there. You start to see how the organizations themselves are dealing with mental health in the workplace. And then, look at all the rest of these. You see numbers like how much productivity is lost, and then this return on investment idea that $1 invested in a mental health gives you $4 back in return. Lisa.
Laura, I really think that number, I mean, we don't see that kind of return on investment in that many places in the world, in things that we do. So when we're always asking, like, what's the impact of our work? And I know if you're working for a healthcare organization, you're constantly asking, like, so what? What's the difference that I make? And if you're working for plenty of other organizations, whether you're in a transportation industry or an electric company, you're always looking at, like, how do I increase my productivity? How do I make things more efficient? How do I get people just wanting to come to work more? So that, like, that $1, if we think about that $1 bill, whatever you would do with that $1, for me, it's a scratch off lottery ticket. We're all here. We're all human. What does that $1 get me? Does it make me feel better about coming to work 4 days a week? How awesome is that? And what can we do for our employees with just, if we think about, like, just that $1, what does that do?
Thank you, Lisa, for giving me a second. You know, and I think the other interesting thing is that we've seen sort of generational shifts a little bit in what employees expect from their employer. So I am Gen X, and my parents are boomers, and so there wasn't sometimes a whole lot of room for these kinds of conversations in my household. But I also know then that like Gen Alpha, Gen Z are really having expectations of these kinds of dialogue in the workplace, open communication about these issues in the workplace. And so as we as leaders in organizations are trying to recruit and retain really high quality talent, especially of younger generations, it's really important for us to be able to point to something that says this, we as an organization care about the mental health of our employees. And so all of this is fine and good, right? So you could be sitting here and saying, I agree with you, Laura, that all sounds great. But how do we go about doing this? How do we know that we're doing the right thing? And how do we know where we should put, we don't have a lot of resources that we can put against this. What are the critical few things that we can focus on that'll make a difference in our organization? And I think that we have some answers for that. So Lisa, if you want to hit the next one. In general, if we talk about accreditation, so that's what URAC does. Shawn mentioned before that we don't really have any side gigs. We don't do consulting. We don't do any of those other things. We are an accrediting body. So if there are folks on this call, and you could tell me who you are if you want to, but there are folks on this call who are URAC accredited for something else, probably. Like you might be a specialty pharmacy or any of those kind, or you could be a hospital or health plan. So we accredit all kinds of organizations, and just the same as we do for those is the same way that we want to approach mental health in the workplace. We want to offer an independent way to look at the things that you do in your organization and say, and allow us to verify the quality of what you say you do, right? So we'll get into a little bit of the details about sort of what it looks like to go through accreditation, but basically you tell us what you do and then we ask you to show us how you do it. And that sort of leads us to the next section here, which is education. We are not really prescriptive about how organizations will meet the spirit and letter of our standards, which is why we're able to apply the same standards to really, really big multinational organizations and really, really small local organizations, because we ask you to tell us how you do it. And the truth of the matter is, if you talk to our reviewers, they say that they learn a lot from our clients in the same way that our clients learn from us. So it's not monodirectional education either. And that I think is a really valuable collaborative thing that we do. So my past is in the healthcare world, is in a health plan. I used to work for health plans, and we were accredited, and it was always so scary, right? Like anybody who's been through it is probably shaking their head yes right now. But when I go to events with URAC reviewers, people are so happy to see them, and they say, oh, I love so and so, or thank you so much, we learned so much. And for me, that is a real difference that URAC is able to offer in our accreditation process, and really how you feel when you're finished with it.
So those of you in the chat box who are accredited, some of you, don't make me call you out because I see some of you in here. Be proud of yourself. Share with the group, what are you accredited for? I know we have a couple specialty pharmacies in there. I see health content. While you're doing that, Laura, our partner, Sarah Toll with One Mind at Work, who's one of the people we get to work with every day, and she's great. She said she recently heard the workplace ROI concept returned to its value, VOI, value of investment, recognizing that in addition to dollar impacts, there are other benefits, like not just the dollar, but like, do you see people smiling more? Are they chatting with each other at lunch? Yeah, they're taking lunch, but is your lunchroom quiet, or are people actually talking about their weekends? Are they talking about their Halloween costumes or what kind of candy they're giving out? And I think that some of the like water cooler stuff that we may have lost over the last couple of years that we can bring back, that has that value, and people coming to a place where they feel like they belong. And obviously this all goes along with diversity, inclusion, belonging. But I really like how, Sarah, I like how you pointed that. I like how you heard it, and really just what does it mean to do that full investment? What is beyond the dollars?
I love that. I think the only other thing that I wanted to offer here about accreditation is when we say it's a verification of quality, I sort of made myself laugh when I was looking at these slides because it really is like a gold seal. I mean, we literally have a gold star. That's what you get when you become accredited with URAC. So we really want to be able to identify a really, the quality that organizations are undertaking. They could be in healthcare, but they don't have to be in healthcare for this accreditation. Lisa, do you want to do the next one? So then let's transition a little bit to talking about our mental health at work accreditation. So there's basically two sides of this. Excuse me. One side is why do you want to do this? Why would an organization want to engage with this? And the other side is like, how does it actually happen? And we'll get deeper into the right side in a second. But okay, so on the left side, we say, why would you want to do this? Like if you're the decision maker, or if you're speaking to the leadership in your organization and you want to make the case for engaging with the mental health at work accreditation, it's sort of like we are able to provide the recognition for the work that you're already doing. So I believe that if you're on this webinar, you probably work for an organization that cares enough about mental health in the workplace that you would be able to be marginally successful with this accreditation, or else you wouldn't be here. You care about it and you want to have recognition. I was talking before about the sort of retention and recruitment idea. This is exactly what we're talking about, that the accreditation is like an external, outward facing piece of validation that your organization is doing what they need to do. And then it also, going through the process, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second, actually helps you as an organization get better, right? So you go through the process of the accreditation and you say, oh, well, here's some short sides that we have. Let's address these because this is not only better for our accreditation, but it's also better for our employees. And so it gives you workable strategies that help you address the issues that you have. And so, we put the accreditation together to sit on top of and besides the work that our friends at One Mind at Work have done, and also Columbia University and Ethisphere. So these are like well-recognized, big brain people who know how to identify the ways to make a difference in the workplace. And we're really proud to work with them and offer this as an externally facing accreditation. And so one of the things that I want to talk about our accreditation is it's available to any organization. So I don't know exactly who's on the webinar because I didn't look when you all were coming in, but the thing that makes this different for any of you folks who are already accredited with URAC for something else, this is not a healthcare accreditation. This is an employment accreditation, employer accreditation. So it's available to any organization of any size in any industry. We've had, a lot of interest, say, for example, in legal firms, especially if you think about the big sort of white shoe firms in New York, Boston, and even DC to a certain extent. That's a very high pressure situation. So we could see how those organizations would care about protecting the mental health of their employees. And one of the things that is important if you are URAC accredited is the scoring level. So I will talk about them a little bit in a second, but there are 4 of the scoring levels, which means that this accreditation is not binary. Every other one of our accreditations when you see it, you're either accredited or you're not, right? But for this one, we have 4 sort of advancing levels of accreditation that sort of refer to the fact that organizations could be beginning their journey with really having mental health in their workplace, in their communication, in their work design, all those things, or they could be far along where it's absolutely integrated, and we want to recognize that, which also goes back to the point that I was making about sort of growing your capabilities, because if you grow your capabilities, then you can sort of request to have your accreditation revisited. So maybe you go from a level 1 to a level 2 because that's one of your corporate goals for the year. So we also are able to do that. And that's what makes it different for any of you all who are on here who have been accredited for URAC for something else in the past. Next slide. So I wanted to demystify for folks and for those of you who maybe for whom accreditation as a concept might be new, or maybe these things seem awfully complicated, but they're really not. So I think the main thing to take away from this one is, yes, there is some jargon. So desktop review versus validation review versus application. So let's talk about this in normal people language. So first of all, our whole process takes about 6 months. I will say to you that if you are very well, sort of if you've gotten yourself in order and sort of done all the pre-work, your application period can be shorter than 2 months. We sort of say that's about how long it takes, but it could be shorter if you're well, like, you know, they say well qualified, and meaning that you've got yourself all sort of like got your ducks in a row. And so then what comes from that is the desktop review. And this is where basically your reviewer will look at the things that you upload, and I'll talk about what those things may look like. The things that you upload, like a policy or a meeting minutes or any of the sorts of things that would sort of prove what you say you do. Maybe the reviewer has a question, or maybe you have a question. We call those RFIs. That's the chance for ask for more information. And it's natural for you to have some discussion with your reviewer in that part of the process. And then once you lock all that in, the validation review is sort of then says, okay, here's what you've said, here's what you say that you do. Well, show us, prove to us how you do what you do. And that's when frequently the reviewer will actually talk to your team, talk to leaders, talk to rank and file folk who are really experiencing what you're doing with mental health in the workplace. And so that's the process. And 6 months, it could be less if you are really well prepared when you start.
Laura, I think a lot of our attendees today have gone through the accreditation process. But for those who haven't, that part where we ask for information is not I have reviewers say to me, they've never had a client who hasn't had that request for information, the opportunity to ask for information. Sometimes just clarifying, sometimes it's, hey, we want to learn more about what you're doing here. Like that's some really cool innovation you're doing in X topic across the board. So here it might be in preparing staff for emergencies or working with families or things like, hey, how do you design for a workforce that's part mobile? And we're probably looking more at what are you doing? We want to just feed us more information. I think Laura mentioned this earlier. When our reviewers come on site, at first somebody if it's like, oh my gosh, it's the reviewer. And again, people have come up to us at conferences or when we see them in person and they say, oh my gosh, I love Heidi. And it's like, she's like, you don't hear that every day. Well, actually, yeah, I do because so many clients say that. So I know for our current clients, your reviewers, relationships over time, that's a really important part of this. And looking at this accreditation as well, it really is meant to grow over time. Laura, do you want to add on to that at all, or do you want me to just move on to the next thing?
No, I guess the only other thing I wanted to say about this from the accreditation standpoint is that, whether you have gone through accreditation already or have not, just a reminder of all of the sort of resources that you would receive through the process. So you have an assigned client relations manager, you have an assigned reviewer, we have a client hub, we have on-demand learning opportunities, we have a whole variety of ways that you can sort of make yourself comfortable in the process of the accreditation, including we have a live event that happens once a year as well. Dr. Griffin.
Hi, Laura. So as we're talking about this, I wanted to chime in. I just couldn't help myself. One of the things when I used to go through accreditation as part of a hospital system, I used to say it was this dog and pony show. It was sort of we're going to spend 6 months getting ready for the 3 days the reviewers are going to be here. We're going to give everybody new name badges. We're going to move all the boxes down off of the top shelf. We're going to, hide all the messy things. They're going to come in. We're going to sort of march them through the places we want to march them through so they don't see the bad, icky things that are going on. And then when they're gone, we'll all have a party to celebrate that they're gone. This really is about a collaborative learning experience. Our job as accreditors is not to catch you doing wrong. It's about equipping you to do right more often. And this program is, I would argue, is unique. If you've ever looked at things like magnet programs, if you've ever looked at best places to work surveys and that sort of stuff, this is not that. This is about a collaborative learning approach to objective research findings from really trusted and well-recognized organizations and equipping you so that you can fill in the gaps that you have, because everybody's got gaps. We went through the index and we found gaps that we had, and we've worked on them. And when you do work on them, it's one thing to throw a pizza party for all the nurses. It's another thing to have consideration of workplace design so that you're not stressed and that you have the things that you need to be successful in all of these things. That's a whole different level. And what we're seeing is that organizations who really are committed to a mentally healthy workplace do a lot of things to support their people, but also prevent them from getting in trouble in the first place. Support them if they need it. Very often, benefits, HR and benefits is an area that's really nervous about somebody coming in and looking at your workplace from a mental health standpoint. But the surprise is they usually score the best because they've been doing all the benefit stuff for years. It's really sort of okay, what are you doing for us? We added mental health first aid training for our employees. We've added a mental health strategic statement. So a mental health strategy for us as an organization, and having a collaborative group to work on that. So I mean, I think that that's really important to say this is meant to improve in-house. And if somebody were saying, where do I start? I would say go to the One Mind at Work Index. That's a self-assessment where you can sort of get your ducks in a row, as Laura has referred to. The next thing that you do is once you have your ducks in a row is you want to show people your ducks. And showing people your ducks means having somebody come in independently and audit and see how you're doing, give you a score. But then when you have that score, you can use it for retention, you can use it for recruiting, you can use it to continue to grow. Maybe the next year you're going to work on something else and you're going to come back and get a higher score. It really is about making your workplace the best place possible. And it's not just about being a magnet for nurses or a magnet for doctors or a magnet for, left-handed credential verifications people. It's about looking at your entire workplace and building it up so that you can take care of that precious resource, which is all the people who you work with.
So, Shawn, Jorge is asking a question here. Who audits the mental health expert? So what are the checks and balances between the different organizations that are working on this? Because we know it's a lot of partners. If you go to the mental health index page, you see that. If you go to our page, you see that. Who's checking and how are we doing that?
So the team that built the index, Ethisphere and Columbia and One Mind are all well recognized in their field for the work that they have done for decades in this space. And when we were looking for a partner, we were looking for somebody who was a real expert and not just somebody who was selling benefits and that sort of stuff. And so that's why we met with them and why we participated and why we're working with them in an ongoing way. Now, when it came to building our program, they brought a lot of the research to the table, and this is research that's used by the WHO, that's used by different organizations, well recognized, that sort of stuff. And we built a program based upon it because the index takes a look at certain things and accreditation looks at other things also. So we reflect the index, but we're not a carbon copy of the index. But our program is built by experts. We have an accreditation. We have a health standards committee that looks at all of our programs. We have an accreditation committee, an independent group that approves our programs. We have a board who approves all of our programs. Our board is made up of groups like representatives from the AMA, the ANA, APA, Amazon. We've got Blue Cross Blue Shield, we've got AHIP. So we're a multi-stakeholder organization. And the way that we make programs, as a matter of fact, we have what are called government deemed programs, which means even the federal government has come in and looked at our processes about how we do reviews, about how we build programs, and they have said, yes, you pass our test. So we're audited by the federal government on a regular basis. We also have all these organizations on our board as we built this program. So that's who's checking up on us. Now, when we build a new program, our programs aren't perfect. Our programs continue to evolve and grow. This first program looks a lot like the One Mind at Work Index because that's where all the research is flowing into that. And then we bring in our own special sauce about doing an accreditation, but it will continue to grow and evolve over time. Honestly, as we work with organizations, we're learning things. Maybe we're going to find something in the legal field where they do things a certain way when it comes to onboarding, and we think that's a really good thing. We're going to take that and put it into the next version of our program, because it's not about keeping secrets, it's about sharing best practices. And in healthcare, that's very common that you want to share best practices because it's about taking care of the patients. Well, we're going to share best practices because it's about taking care of your coworkers.
Thank you, Shawn. It's actually, this is a good segue if we go to the next slide where we actually dig in a little bit to this accreditation. So there are 10 focus areas here, and I think if Lisa hasn't done it already, she'll probably share the link to the standards at a glance, which give you the sort of breakdown of what we look at, very top line, for each one of these. And so I thought that I would take a couple of them and dig into them a little bit. And now that we have all the language of like, desktop review, we'll know what we're all talking about together, right? So I thought I would take communication and resources and benefits and dig a little bit into like what we look for and what you would use to prove that you're fulfilling the spirit of this focus area, and then also what we do actually in the validation review. So if we start with the communications area, there are 4 sort of subsets, and I'm going to look at this to make sure I get it right: approach, channels, recipients, and content. And for each one of those, essentially, we're asking you to upload like your comms plan. What does it have in it? How does it focus on mental health? When do you talk about that? How do you talk about it? To whom do you talk about it with? And so those are the kind of things that you would upload into our system, whatever, to sort of prove that you have a comms plan that does have as an element of it mental health in the workforce. So okay, so then what happens when we actually want to do the validation review? In that case, for the validation review, we talk to leaders, we do some staff interviews. So it might be leadership, or it might be recipients of the communication, but it's to get a sense of like, this is what an organization's, what you say you do, and this is what the experience of the people who are receiving this is how they experience it, and put those together. And then if we go back to this idea of the scoring, the different elements will give you sort of different scoring, and you'll know if you're a 1 or you're a 4 on each of these, and all those roll up to a big sort of score of either 1 to 4, or through 4, I should say. And likewise, if we look at resources and benefits, and I chose that one because resources and benefits is the one that, if we look at organizations, usually perform pretty well here, because a lot of the benefits are required, and they're also, resources and benefits are a knowable thing, right? So organizations are comfortable saying, yes, we have benefits that cover, mental health services. We may have, training, or mental health at work training. And sometimes organizations, large ones, may go all the way to having like an on-site mental health clinician, or they could do something like develop mental health leaders within the organization who sort of, I like to say that they're like Sherpas, that they sort of help walk other folks through mental health issues if they have them. But not every organization will have all of those things, and that's okay, because every organization is addressing the resources and benefits needs of their cohort in the way that's appropriate for them. Likewise, when we do the validation review, we would also take a look at the resources and benefits on offer, and then have a discussion, interviews with employees, with cohorts of folks, and how they receive and how they use the resources and benefits. So that's 2 examples of these 10, and then most of the rest of them fall in a similar way. And I think if you look at the Beyond the Basics and the standards at a glance that Lisa just shared, that you can see what I just talked about sort of flows through the rest of them. You can begin to understand what we look at, and how we judge organizations for their mental health at work programs.
Yeah, I think, Laura, many people are probably used, because our current clients are used to the standards at a glance. Beyond the Basics is like, what could I tell my supervisor? Or what could I tell our CEO that we're going to look at? So for me, my area is training, and I'm going to look at like, how do we train our team members in mental health? And I think I've worked for organizations that are as small as 7 people and as large as 6,000 people or 10,000 people. I know training looks really different depending on where you are in the country. The language you use could look different. What time you offer the training also goes along with workplace design. If you have a 24/7 operation, what does that look like? I've worked in a distribution center that had 24/7 operation. So what does training look like there as it relates to workforce design? What does that design look like? Mental health resources. If you're running 24/7 organization because you are a hospital, what does mental health look like for your overnight employees? What does it look like for your early morning people? What does scheduling look like? But also recognizing that what it looks like at a 3-person utilization management organization, it's not to say they can't do it. It looks different, and different is great in this case. And it's not even to say, sometimes smaller organizations do stuff because they're not in their own way. Those of you who work at smaller organizations, you can probably get stuff done a little bit quicker because it's a dozen of you, as opposed to larger organizations where you've got 5 communications channels to get a pencil at times. So just know that one is not better, they're different. We all learn from all of them. And sometimes we can cite, hey, you know what, this organization in small town Nebraska actually does this really well. I'd love to share it with you, large organization based in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Lisa. If we look at the next slide, we go into a little bit of detail here about the 4 levels, which we've sort of talked about. And essentially these build on one another, going from a sort of reactive approach all the way to this fully comprehensive integrated approach and everything that goes in between. And so an organization that's just beginning the process might be at a level 1, but perhaps you have a strategic goal to reach a level 2 or 3 in the next 2 or 3 years. Unlike other URAC accreditations, you can actually, after a year, you could rescore yourself. We'll rescore you to find out maybe you've moved up because you recognize where your short sides are and you approach and you addressed them, so that now you have moved from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3, or. So that is something that's very different for those of y'all who are on the webinar who are already URAC accredited. This is a pretty significant difference from our current accreditations. And that's because we really do want, if you hearken back to one of the other slides, we really do want this to be a growth and building opportunity for you so that you can find the ways that you can make the biggest difference in the lives of your employees, and then address that and continue to sort of receive the next level up recognition. I was talking about this earlier today and said that I think one of the things that's most valuable about this sort of process and really addressing mental health needs in the workplace is, like, there's the workplace, right? And we spend a lot of time there, 8-10 hours a day, more than we do with our families in for sometimes of the year. And then there's also our family. So, like, if we as leaders in organizations improve the healthcare or the mental health of our colleagues by addressing these things that we're talking about, then that sort of, that spreads out to the family, and then that spreads out to the community. And we see that this is like so much bigger than the sum of its parts, because for each thing that we do that improves the mental health of our colleagues in the workplace, we're also improving mental health activities throughout the community, which I think is super powerful. And sort of on that vein, on the next slide, you may say to yourself, what do I do after I'm finished with this accreditation? It's one more thing. Well, we really wanted to create this and give you support materials that allow you to make the best use of this accreditation. I think Shawn mentioned before that this is a way for you to show people on the outside and also your own staff that you're really you're committed to workplace mental health. As we think about recruiting, especially younger folk, but people who are interested in bringing their whole selves to work and feeling a sense of belonging in the work that they do, we'd like to be be able to help you with that kind of external messaging where you need it. Now, this is an example of where maybe big organizations don't need our help, but maybe smaller ones do. And we want to offer what we've seen that can work in help building these programs, these communication programs. So there's also internal comms. So as you articulate it to your staff, like, why did we do this? What does it mean? Why is it important? It helps us, again, really talk the walk around mental health at work. And so Dr. Griffin will deliver your award if you'd like him to. So I have this great, this vision of like, it's a board meeting, or it's a national leadership meeting, or it's your all hands meeting, and you've earned your URAC accreditation in mental health at work. How great would it be to celebrate that? And have Shawn come and drop it off, do some handshaking, I think, and that leads us to the press release and PR and those kind of things. But Shawn?
Well, yeah, I can't let that one slide by, Laura. The reason why we're doing that is because we want this to be a big deal for your organization. Now, early on, we're looking for early adopters to come on board and to sort of puff this up. We want you to build this up. This is a thing that matters. This is a new offering from us. It's a new program. We always joke about we start out with our friends and family because we want organizations who know us, who trust us, who recognize this to come on board. And one of the things that I have said is we want this to be a big deal. If me coming to your organization and presenting with a big certificate and celebrating that you're one of our early adopters, maybe you're the first food packaging company that does this. Maybe you're the first hospital that does this. We want to make it special for your organization and recognize that you're buying into this and that this is a good thing. And that's part of what we want to do, is to make it a big deal. Now, if you prefer to not have me come, that's okay too. Maybe eventually we'll say, if you pay extra, I won't come. But just the basic is I show up, but you have to pay extra to keep me away. Joking about that. This really is about, we want this. We know that for organizations, it's something to have a press release. It's something to be in the newspaper. That should help you with your recruiting. That should help you with your retention. That should help your employees know that you're investing not just in, oh, look, pizza parties or an Amazon gift card or a new benefit that gives you something that no one's ever going to use, but you're really looking at your workplace holistically as to make it a better place for you and your friends and your families to work. This is about making it better. This isn't about, us giving you a gold star. We could give you a gold star anyway, but if you're not working to make things better, we think you're missing out on a chance to really take care of your people.
So we got two questions in, Michael. I see. So one question, yes, this program is widely available to any organization. We don't care. We want you to be the electric company. If you're a pharmacy, awesome. If you do case management, wonderful. If you're academic, come on board. There is sort of no limits to this. Michael asked, do you review areas such as utilization of employee assistance program? I mean, he says he's absolutely right here. It's great to offer EAP services, but there's been historically underutilization of EAPs and other mental health services. Shawn, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, along those lines, the question is, what's the right amount? And what is your goal as an organization in providing those services? Are you analyzing who's using it? Are you looking to see maybe all of a sudden somebody in your West campus is using a whole ton of these because they've got a terrible workplace over there? How are you using the information that you have? So analysis of benefits and your benefit design, for us, one of the things that we have done over the years, I mean, we had a strategy in our heads, but we didn't have it down on paper. If you looked at our communications during the pandemic, it was reflective of a valuing people first mental health strategy that was permeating everything that we did, but we never wrote it down. So we got to write down our strategy, and we got to look at our communications, and we got to look at all those sort of things. And this is very different from a machine shop in Keokuk versus a knowledge worker organization in London. And so that's why our standards talk about what you should be doing and how we're going to analyze it. But you have to tell us your story about how you're going after those things. And that's a collaborative process. Again, we're not trying to catch you doing wrong. We're trying to educate you on how to do things even better.
Yeah, I would add to that. Sorry, Lisa, I would add to that there's this concept that we want to look at the sort of like optimization of the usage of these benefits. So there's no perfect answer. It's, what does it look like? Is it tracking where it needs to be? It's really about optimally having those benefits and resources being used in the way that they need to be.
There's a couple
Yes.
questions there. Let me
Yeah.
just jump in
Yeah.
with. So one of the things that we do is we deal with organizations that are very complicated. I mean, we deal with something that's, multi-state health plan, that sort of stuff. When it comes to doing this accreditation, we say, what part of your organization do you want us to look at? Okay, because maybe you've done a really focused job among your, management in Pennsylvania, but maybe your industrial shop in California hasn't done as much, and you just want to take part of your organization and get that accredited. That makes perfect sense. You can start someplace. And very often organizations, just like we're looking for friends and family, they're looking for who do we want to put on the scale first to see how they're doing. Okay. And so you can take part of your organization, and we've seen that. Now the cost for employers, we're envisioning down the road that this will be based on the size of the organization. Right now, I'm gonna go out on a limb. We're recording this, putting all sorts of stuff out there. The answer is it depends. I mean, the simple fact is that, if you're a massive shop, then it's probably going to cost more than if you're a little tiny place. Laura, do I want to put a number out there or not?
Well, why don't we do this? I think we're ready. The only other thing I'll say, and we'll get to this, I promise you, Audrey. The only thing I'll say that's the last thing on the slide beforehand is that, we really are looking for partners who go through this process, who want to work with us, say, like we'll do a proposal at, like, I don't know, a large national conference where we could get on the stage and talk about this and what your outcomes were and how it was beneficial and those kind of things. So we would love to have you join us once you go through the process and earn your accreditation. That's one of those sort of like beyond PR, beyond social media. We want to do a little bit more there. So now,
So yeah, Laura, I put this slide up here because I think really the answer to the cost and time question is it's going to be different for every organization, which is why I think your best step is to actually scan that QR code. It takes you right to a link to where you can schedule a time to meet with Laura. She's going to set you up. She's going to get to know your organization a little bit better. Some of you, we know your organization, but we don't know your organization in this light. So it's important that we get to know, who are you? What are you doing? What are your different functions? Like Shawn said, I'll take my academic. Maybe it's just your student affairs team, or maybe it's just the management of your sports team there.
Lisa, let me jump in, because if I were on this webinar and I was asking the question, how much does it cost? And we ducked the answer, I'd be kind of torqued about it, because we're about transparency and those sort of things. Laura,
yes.
when you and I have talked, and when we have given a quote to a little organization, okay, what kind of range what have we said for that little organization?
I will say that broadly speaking, this does not just include small organizations, but I have written proposals in the last weeks for as little as $5,000 and as much as $50,000. So
Okay.
you can sort of put yourself on large multinational, full accreditation of the full, or you can put yourself as small as, we are a big company, but we only want to do New Jersey right now, to Shawn's point. We have a center of excellence in Texas, or this line of business. And the good news about doing it in a scaled way is that you get your feet wet, and then you can do it with larger parts of the organization. But I don't want to be secretive, to Shawn's point. These are the kinds of numbers that we're looking at right now.
And let me just say, we're nonprofit, we're independent. That price doesn't mean we're selling you consulting services to go along with it. Okay, if we do this for your organization and it's $5,000, we're probably going to lose money on it just from our staff time from doing it. But we think it's important enough that we want to get some organizations doing this. Okay, so this is not a trick for my retirement or my jet or anything like that. We are an independent, nonprofit accreditation organization. So,
Audrey, to answer your question, the original, it's 3 years unless you want to go back and try to get better at it. So our accreditation lasts for 3 years. And so if you took it and if you went through the process and you were at a level 2 and you were happy with that and you never wanted to take another bite at the apple, that would be fine. You'd have a full 3-year accreditation for that amount of money. And then after 3 years, if you want to, when you want to reaccredit, we'll go through the process again. What if the cost is 500 billion? Well, in that case, my friend Jorge, I don't know what you and I are doing, but I'm doing something wrong.
This program was built because we want people to do it. We will learn from you. You will learn from us. We will take better care of organizations as we move forward, but also we're turning workplaces into better workplaces for our friends and families and the people that we know.
Shawn and Laura, I'm just going to ask you a question here while I give our attendees a chance to chime in. Any last questions here? But what do you see as the role of organizational leadership in doing this, and who all from an organization can be involved in doing this? Laura, your head is nodding, so you go first.
So I think it's really interesting because what this is not, and Shawn said it and I want to reiterate it, this is not another survey to ask your staff how they feel about working at their workplace. This is a small group of leaders in the organization who have insight into some of the 10 things that we just talked about. So HR is there for certainly. If you have an internal comms team, they'll be there. Probably if your CEO is very involved in this, they would be there, and you sort of go through the process. And so it's not a wide group of people, which is why we can get back down to it takes 6 months to get this done. We're not asking for every person in the organization to put that, to sort of fill out a form, because that is not going to get you what you need, right? And I'll say, having been through the index, this is a sort of personal story for us. Having been through the index, there were things that I learned from the process of going through the index that URAC does that I wasn't aware of, that helped me as I was even trying to communicate about it, right? So the whole thing is a learning experience internally. So not only do we learn from you and you learn from us, but oftentimes you learn from each other, which I thought was really, instructive as we went through the index.
Yeah, this is meant to be a diagnostic evaluation of your organization, not to, as I said, shame you, but to help you find areas where you need to improve. Very often it's not HR, it's not benefits that needs to improve. They often score higher than the rest of the organization. But executive support, leadership support is important. Executive leadership is actually one of the 10 areas that we look at. But again, going through this as the CEO, there were things that we learned that we were doing already that I didn't know we were doing. And that says something about me just not paying enough attention, I guess. But also there's nooks and crannies in your organization where stuff is happening that you don't know about, where somebody has a great strategy over here, but it hasn't come over the fence or anything like that. So I think that it's important. I mean, the index is a self-assessment. That's fantastic. We did that. We learned a lot from that. There comes a point where you go from a self-assessment to we're proud of what we're doing, and we think that that's useful for our internal team to know and for external people to know as we look to bring in workers. And the younger generation of workers is looking for a place that doesn't beat them for a paycheck. They're looking for a place where they can have value and they're treated with respect, and their work actually aids their life and doesn't drain their world.
Laura, Shawn, I'm not seeing any new questions. I do want to always give people just a minute back in their day just to breathe or heat up lunch. So with that, the QR codes, I'll leave them on the screen just for another quick minute. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for the great questions and conversation in here. If you're a current client, I know we'll see a few of you in a couple of weeks at URAC Connect. But scan the QR codes, look at our program, try to schedule a meeting with Laura if you're interested, and we will chat with you soon.